Hayley, thank you so much for joining us today on Safeguarding Redefined. As anyone who works on the front line dealing with very stressful situations, we can all have those moments in our career where we realize something needs to change, like an epiphany of some sorts, where it may be the way that we're processing things, the way that we're looking after ourselves. Mine was at the end of dealing with, after about 15 years of working on the front line, a very serious situation where somebody took their life. What's your one moment?
So thanks for having me, Chris. Really excited to be here. So I guess for me, it was just over 10 years ago. I was a safeguarding lead at a school in Sutton, and it was the October half term. You remember everything so well. I got a call to say that one of our pupils had tragically been murdered by her parents. And honestly, Chris, all I can say to you is time literally stood still. I remember everything about that call. And I think up until that point, anyone working in safeguarding, you want to believe that you can stop all of these things from happening. And it was a real turning point because I suddenly realized we can't fix everything. I saw a vulnerability in the people that I was working with. People have always come across, really strong, really together. Obviously, we had a job to do. We had a process that you had to follow. But the biggest thing for me was validating how we were feeling and recognizing that we were human first. So that was the moment that I realized, it took a while because I kept pushing, looking at, the children who had lost their friend, dealing with the community who were asking lots of questions, the teachers who had a job to do, the serious case review that was going on. There was so much going on. And reflecting now, looking back, 10 years on, I just kept going, just kept pushing, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to really realize how I was feeling because I felt vulnerable. It felt like a weakness. I felt like I had let the little girl down. There was something maybe we missed. And that's a really difficult situation to be in.
Thanks for sharing that with us. There's one moment where you mentioned about validating our emotions, and that is so important. There's sometimes where we do just carry on and go, right, no, we need to just focus on this. We're not the important person. And that's where we make a mistake, isn't it? That's where we get to that stage where we go, something needs to change. We need to actually focus on our own emotions, process them properly, because otherwise we're not good for anyone. And I completely empathize with you, that experience of going, that I wish I could have done so much more, and that you have that guilt as well because you feel that you had an opportunity to be someone who was a protector, somebody who should have interrupted the potential harm. And yet when something does happen, you think, oh no, I must have failed. But that's not the case. And we need to stop thinking like that. And just purely by the fact that we actually have that emotion shows how much we care and how much we are dedicated to our role. How did you process your emotions in that situation?
It took a really long time. And again, looking back, I can give the advice now. But I certainly didn't do things the right way. As I said, I really struggled with just doing. I would go in and put everything into the job, but I went full force, like busying myself, distracting myself, not really giving myself that time. And I wouldn't recommend that at all. I think I know why I did it, and I know why my colleagues did it. I wanted to be there for everyone else, and I wanted to fix things. Now, when that happens, you obviously can't change what's happened in the past. And, from the serious case review, it came out that school had done everything that they should have done. But of course, you still sit there thinking, but hang on, someone still died. So there was that kind of process. And I think I was really, really hard on myself. And there are still moments, I would still say, Chris, that even today, as I said, 10 years on, I still think about that case almost every day. I found it really difficult initially to even talk about it. But now, in my work with schools, I make sure when I'm training, when I'm working with DSLs, I absolutely do share that story because I don't see it, as a vulnerability or a weakness. I see it as something that, DSLs, safeguarding teams, it isn't just DSLs, it's anyone working in schools, anyone working with children where these things come up. I think we know we've got a job to do. We know we've got to keep going. but it comes in, the complexity of some of the cases that come in are huge. And I think it's that realization that, do you know what, sometimes things can get heavy, and it's that need to open up, to talk about it, to have a reflective, safe space without sitting there thinking, I can't share this because actually, you know, people are going to think I can't do my job. We can do our jobs, and you know, we are brilliant at our jobs. And the people that I talk to every day who are going above and beyond, that sometimes they just feel that they can't do it anymore because they feel that they're never getting through their list, or you know, there are huge changes. They want to have the biggest impact, but they feel blocked in certain ways. So just by talking it through, I think that can really, really help.
I've always found that with DSLs, sometimes it can just be a position where someone in leadership will think, oh, they could do it. That's something that they can handle, without fully taking into account what the position means and what that person might come up against. And so they do need to have that awareness built within a whole organization, one that it's safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, but also whoever has the role of DSL, they have a really tough job, and they may be going through things or managing things that you have absolutely no idea about. And because of confidentiality, we cannot pass on that information. We could potentially say we're dealing with a really tough case, or there's a really tough situation, depending on the size of the organization, obviously. But yeah, that person is going to come up against some really serious stuff. And so it shouldn't just be handed off to somebody to kind of go, oh, you can deal with it. Because that's not helpful for your organization. And so there needs to be a lot more focus and a lot more awareness about what it means to be in that position. And I also have this other concern that sometimes we can just chuck people into training. And I say that flippantly, but the fact is that, you know, just put them into this training and go, right, just do this online module and you'll be fine to be a DSL after that. And so that's why I really like the fact that you're telling your honest story. And that's what I do in my training. Is I don't do it to scare or to build that fear at all. I do it to kind of go, this is what you could come up against. And this is just to prepare you, because that's what the point of training is to prepare you for the position.
But I think, you know, you have that question where you think, do I share this? And I always remember that, do I share it? And I thought, actually, yes, because I feel like it really has made me who I am today. It's made me see things completely differently. And I guess it was about maybe 5 years ago. So for the first kind of 5 years, couldn't really talk about it, didn't want to talk about it. But then I started to do a lot of training in schools, and I thought, I don't want to dilute this. I want to do it. So one day I just shared the story. I wasn't even planning on doing that, but it just felt right. And there were some incredible people in that room, but I was not ready for this. One of them put their hand up, and I'd say there was probably about 40 people in there. And they just said, but don't you feel so guilty? How could you not have known? And Chris, honestly, I wasn't prepared for that. I had goosebumps, felt really emotional. And then I thought, do you know what? Fair enough, because they want to know the answer. So that's when I thought it's so important to share it, because of course there are processes, there are systems. As I said, people can say, you've done everything that you can. We know that we can do training, we can do policies, we can have the conversations. We can't always be responsible for what happens in a child's home. You know, we're not there. So I then did share absolutely the impact that it had. And I think it was important to do that because, you know, I do want to say to anyone working in safeguarding, you will have those moments, but when you look at everything, you cannot put the blame on yourself. You want to be, you know, assured that you're having the right conversations, you're doing the right training, but it's what you do and it's the learning you take from some of these difficult cases. I think you don't dilute what happens, you use it and try and inform and empower others who are working in safeguarding.
That's sad that people come out of those comments, but I've been there myself where you can be as prepared as you possibly can for something. But
they genuinely wanted to know. And at first I thought, how could you ask me that? But actually, I am glad they did, because it made me think in a different way. And I think you touched on a really important thing. I always remember anything that comes up, anything can be safeguarding. People can say, oh, that's safeguarding, go to the safeguarding lead. And actually, that safeguarding lead is one person. So for me, it's been over the years really encouraging people to build the capacity within their schools, have that wider kind of network, support network, so that it isn't all just on one person. Yes, you can have your DSL having oversight, but absolutely share the load. Everyone is responsible. You can't just leave it to one person. And also for the DSL, actually being able to talk through some of those difficult cases. Sometimes you can be really close to a case and you can't see beyond that. But getting somebody else's opinion, sometimes it just gives you the assurance that you need, or maybe something that you hadn't even thought of to make the outcome that little bit better.
It's about finding those trusted partners within your organization or institution, wherever you work. And I've always encouraged people to have accountability partners. I always used to make sure I had it. They didn't necessarily have to be part of student services or safeguarding in general. They could be a member of the academic team that you fully trust and that you can sit down with, aside from supervision, just someone you can just kind of go, right, they know this place really well, and just to run off some ideas to. And he clearly states to them that it has to be confidential, and no one else is to know about this situation. That you develop that relationship with them. But also another thing that I've been encouraging people to do is to have safeguarding ambassadors, and that's having members of staff from each department or area of your organization or institution, and they are people that can feed back to you, or at least take on some of the kind of responsibilities for building a safeguarding culture in other areas of your organization. And that really helps as well. And you meet with them every now and then, just basically, or communicate with them just with some details about, look, we've got to look out for these trends, or these things are going on at the moment. And once again, they know that they have to keep all that information confidential. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean they have to know everything that is going on in safeguarding. It's just purely and simply as somebody who can just feed information backwards and forwards to you, and support you with your training.
But you're right. I think sometimes people want to know everything, don't they? And they think, and it's hard. You can only, obviously you share what you can share on a need to know basis. But I think that is so important, having that kind of ambassador. So, nobody feels on their own, because it can feel really isolating. You can have the biggest team ever and you're working in a school, there are loads of people everywhere, but you can still have that feeling. You get home at the end of the day and you feel isolated, because you do feel that it's on you. So that building the capacity is really important. I also think people, it's like that question when you say to somebody, how are you? And they say, fine. And you say, how are you really? That kind of question, because people often give you the answer that they think you want to hear. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of in Sutton with the DSLs. It's taken a while, but we've built that relationship where people can ring and say exactly what is going on. And I think that's where you can give the right support and advice. It's being open, it's being transparent. Often they will start with, Hayley, I've completely messed up. And that's hard for anyone to, feel. But when they actually talk it through, they haven't messed up. They've done their absolute best. Maybe there is some learning from it. There is always learning. But, that initial thing, I've messed up. And that's not always the case at all.
It's great to have a safe place where people can actually speak up and say, I need help with this situation. A lot of the times people can think that, oh, someone's going to think I don't know my job, or they think, oh, we need to kind of like maybe move them out of the position, as it were. And that's not a safe place to be. It's not easy working in safeguarding. We have so legislation and guidance continuously changes. Communication is very difficult when you're working on multiple cases. I know for a fact that during the lockdown, and working from home, that was incredibly lonely for a lot of people. But when you're working in safeguarding, you're just sitting at your desk on your own, and trying to obviously manage your children as well, and everything that's going on at the time. It was really, really difficult. And that was one of my main moments where I kind of just went, this is a really, really tough position. I mean, by this point, I've been in it for a while, but that's where it just hit you. And the isolation is just difficult, even outside of lockdown.
It's so hard. And actually, so that's the point. Like I said, although it was 10 years ago that I was dealing with that case, it was actually lockdown that was the biggest turning point. I realised for all of those years, I just kept going. I hadn't really dealt with anything. Lockdown came. There was a massive restructure at work, which was a really difficult time. I lost my dad in the pandemic. I lost my nan. So many things had happened. I was in a job where I just felt like I really wanted to support everyone. So again, didn't deal with what was going on, just went full force into fixing the world or trying to, at a time when we couldn't fix what was going on, but I wanted to be there for everyone else. And so that was a turning point for me, really, that 5 years ago when I sat there and thought, you need to start looking after yourself. And, you know, we all hear that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And before I would say, oh, come on, yes, you can, keep going, keep doing this. But actually, that was when I realized, no, you know what you've been through is hard. It's tough, but to be able to serve people in the right way and give the right support and advice, you need to look after yourself first. So that's my biggest thing for everyone. We need to acknowledge what's going on in schools, what's going on in our home lives. You know, all of that comes together, but it is absolutely not a weakness. In fact, it can be a strength, and it gives you that empathy, that more understanding when you're communicating and trying to support people who are working in safeguarding and similar situations.
You've been through a lot, and I find it fascinating that you're passing on your experiences to support other people. And that just goes to show that how it's just amplifying your voice in this episode today, that the advice you're giving is purely and simply based on personal experience. But you have this desire to just go out there and make sure that people don't fall into that position themselves or struggle and suffer alone. There was a saying, I was just trying to look it up just now, which was basically where someone said, you know, you can, someone who comes out of the fire and yet returns with water to support other people or something along those lines.
Oh, I love
Yeah, I probably didn't do it any justice whatsoever, but you get the idea. That's what I was trying to look for. I was like, come on, Chris, you can find it. But you're doing that, you know, and that's what we stand for at Cornerstone. It's purely and simply, it's making sure that people don't fall into the position that I was in. And that's where I get the passion. When I'm working with somebody who works on the front line, actually, a lot of the people, we seem to have expanded out and actually supporting members of staff within an organisation that probably have nothing to do with safeguarding, only that they have obviously the responsibility that everyone else does, but they don't have the frontline responsibility. And we're finding more and more that organisations are encouraging other members of staff to have supervision because they've experienced stuff themselves. They know these people who are vulnerable because they're either working with them, teaching them. And so they need to have support as well. And I think this is such a great shift within the area, the landscape of safeguarding. We're really moving into a better area than we have been in the last 10 years, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be honest, you know, it's that thing of always learning. So obviously I love a podcast. I love looking and networking, and that's where I came across you. And that's what I felt right from the beginning. There was a connection because it was you sharing your experiences. You know, you were being really real, really honest. And I thought, wow, that's exactly it. You know, you get it. And I think that's the thing with people. I think many times people have said to me, are you sure you're not oversharing? I know there is, you know, there's times when you can overshare, but that is not what the purpose is. It is exactly sharing something if you really think that it can help and impact other people. So I'm sitting there saying, yes, that happened. It was a tragedy. Did I actually look after myself? Did I deal with it in the right way? Absolutely not. But it's that reflection now and trying to make a difference. And, you know, another thing, I think being the education safeguarding manager at Cognos in Sutton, I do get people ringing me and saying, of course you have the answers. You're the safeguarding manager. And I'm honest, you know, sometimes I will have the answers. Sometimes I absolutely won't. And I will say to them, you know, I can give you my experiences, I can tell you what I think, and I can signpost. And that's sometimes what people need. And I think I'm not, you know, worried about saying I don't always have the answers, because how can we? You know, every day, even 20 years working in education, every day something comes up that challenges me or that I've never heard of ever before. But the biggest thing as well is the people you work with, as you've just said, that network around you. So for me, the safeguarding teams, the head teachers, my colleagues at Cognos, the local authority, I could not do my job without them. And I think it's trying to empower those safeguarding leads and those staff in schools, because they are absolutely incredible, and it's making them believe, the difference that they actually make, even on those difficult days, and they think that they've done everything wrong, or, there's a gap. Never underestimate the difference you make to the life of a child. And I think that's exactly it. So it is about the people you work with that make a huge difference.
That's fantastic, and we completely agree at Cornerstone. I've actually had people say to me that, do you think it's really good business sense to advertise your services, but at the same time as you being so honest about your emotions and the way it impacted your mental health and the processes that you went through, the experiences? I'm like, absolutely. It's the thing that attracted me to a lot of people, where they were so open and honest about what they had dealt with. That was like the nice moment for me, where I kind of like felt more, I feel like I'm heard or seen, and I'm not making all the mistakes that I thought I was. So I wanted to be that person, and I've said it in an episode recently where when I went to work at a place years back, I put on LinkedIn, because someone said to me, get on LinkedIn, it'll be really good for you. And I'll be honest with you, it's been brilliant. I love using it. But at the time, I put on there, what advice do you have for a new DSL? What things do you think I should be putting in place? And somebody came back with the comment of going, if you're asking questions like that, I don't think you should be a DSL. And I literally just it just crushed me early in my
That
career.
wasn't the response that you were hoping for.
It wasn't at all, and I just thought, what a horrible thing. And so I like I said in the recent podcast, I was like, I'm never going to be like that. There were anyone can approach me and ask me the most silly of questions that they believe that somebody really should know, and I would never judge them for it, because we can't know everything. We need to have people around us to support us. We will have moments where we are going to struggle with our mental health. You can't deal with this overload of information that we have to sit down and listen to without it affecting you. And if I'm really honest with you, and this is the advice that I was given by a line manager a few years back, if you're getting to the stage where you're not getting affected just a little bit by the situations you'll deal with, maybe it's time for you to find a different career, because
I completely agree with that. Absolutely. When people say you're hardened to it over time, and I get why they're saying it, and there's got to be certain protective factors, but I absolutely do not want to harden to I want to feel it, because I think that is what makes the difference. I think you have to be a certain kind of person, and like you've just said, it's about those protective kind of factors for yourself, and recognizing the impact that it can have, knowing that you've got people to talk to. And I know we've mentioned this before, so the biggest thing for me is that DSLs, head teachers, anyone in safeguarding or working in schools have the option to have reflective safeguarding supervision. And I know there are lots of different people that do it, and lots of people do it in different ways. I know you deliver supervision, I deliver supervision. My point is, it doesn't matter who is delivering it. My message is, it is so important for everyone to reach out, connect, look into it, and really look into the benefits that it can have. I think people often avoid it, or they say, I really haven't got time. It's the last thing on their kind of agenda. But once they actually have it, I think the benefits are huge. So that is my big thing to everyone. I don't care how they get it, do it, but it's something they should definitely discuss in their schools, because everyone needs it.
absolutely. And I think that brings us to a nice end to our episode today. Thank you, Hayley, so much for providing us with your personal experiences, your honesty, and advocating for what we shout about on a daily basis, which is that everyone needs supervision. You need to have that support in place. It doesn't matter how strong you are. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Really appreciate the chance to be here. And I could talk about this all day. So thank you, Chris.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss another episode of Safeguarding Redefined.